ਪਾਰਲੀਮੈਂਟ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਅੱਜ ਕੱਲ੍ਹ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਬਿੱਲ ਹੈ ਬਿੱਲ C-9 ਉਹਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਹੋ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ। ਵਿਚਾਰ ਅਧੀਨ ਹੈ, ਕੁਛ ਸਟੇਜਸ ਉਹ ਪਾਰ ਕਰ ਗਿਆ ਕਾਨੂੰਨ ਤੋਂ ਬਣਨ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ, ਪਰ ਇਹਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਕਾਫੀ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਹੋ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਆਪੋਜੀਸ਼ਨ ਪਾਰਟੀਜ਼ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿਰੋਧ 'ਚ ਨੇ, ਇਹਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਨੁਕਤਾਚੀਨੀ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ ਕਈ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਹੋਰ ਰਾਈਟਸ ਗਰੁੱਪ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਵੀ, ਅਤੇ ਮਤਲਬ ਦੋਵੇਂ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿਚਾਰ ਅਸੀਂ ਇਸ ਬਿੱਲ ਬਾਰੇ ਦੇਖ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਅਤੇ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਹੋਰ ਸਮਝਣ ਦੀ ਕੋਸ਼ਿਸ਼ 'ਚ ਅੱਜ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕ੍ਰਿਟੀਸਾਈਜ਼ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ ਉਸ ਧਿਰ ਦੀ ਤਰਫ ਤੋਂ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਕੰਜ਼ਰਵੇਟਿਵ MP ਐਂਡਰੂ ਲੌਟਨ ਨੇ, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਿ ਐਲਜਨ, ਸੇਂਟ ਥਾਮਸ, ਲੰਡਨ ਸਾਊਥ ਤੋਂ MP ਨੇ, ਅਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਅਸੀਂ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ। ਐਂਡਰੂ, ਗੁੱਡ ਮਾਰਨਿੰਗ ਐਂਡ ਥੈਂਕਸ ਫॉर ਜੁਆਇਨਿੰਗ ਅਸ।
Good morning. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Andrew, your party believe or say that Bill C-9 could limit free speech. Okay, can you point to one specific part of the bill that worries you, where normal opinion or religious belief might become a crime?
Yeah, there are two parts. Number one is that the government is changing the definition of hate in Bill C-9, which means that they're making it, they're giving it a lower threshold, which means it'll be easier for people to be criminally charged for expressing opinions that might be controversial or offensive to some, but are still important to be able to legally express. And the really big issue is that yesterday the Liberals and Bloc Québécois reached an agreement and they voted to amend the bill. And part of their amendment removes a section of the criminal code that has been on the books for years to protect people who share a religious belief that other people might find offensive. And this is very dangerous. This will affect every person of faith. It will affect Christians, Sikhs, Hindus, Jews, Muslims, if they want to teach their traditional beliefs and read from religious texts. And we've been very unequivocal that we stand for freedom of expression and freedom for religious communities to practice their belief without the government interfering.
Can you say more on that? Can you explain why you believe so? Can you give some example?
Yes, this is we often hear people talk about the importance of church and state being separated, but what this really means is that the government has to keep itself out of religion. And the government has to not believe that it has the right to determine how people practice their faith. And people who have religious beliefs in this country do so much. I mean, I think of all the service groups. In my riding, there's a Punjabi business association that just gives free food to the community. And people are motivated by their faith to do great things. So we can't have government that decides it's going to decide how people practice their faith and what beliefs are acceptable. We do not believe that it is the right of government or it is the right of the state to tell people how to raise their family, how to practice, and to tell religious leaders what messages they can teach. And this is just such a fundamental right in Canada.
No, Andrew, if someone quotes the Quran to speak against LGBTQ people or against non-Muslims, do you think they should be treated differently just because it comes from a religious text, or maybe they're misinterpreting the text?
So I think there are two important points there. One is that if people of faith are misinterpreting or abusing text, it's important for other people of faith to be able to correct them, to be able to say, no, that's not what that means. And you can only have that conversation if we protect the freedom to engage in that dialogue. But the other important point you raise is that there is nothing in the criminal code that protects violent or threatening speech under religious protections. The religious protections that we're talking about only apply to a very narrow set of offenses that are called willfully promoting hate. We have seen cases, there's one in Quebec, for example, where a Muslim preacher preached violent things about Jewish people. That is illegal already, and there is no protection because the belief was cloaked in religious language. So when someone is expressing a belief that is violent, that is calling for violence, that is inciting hatred, that is not protected by this religious defense. The religious defense only applies to expression that people are going to make claims about, such as to say it is hateful. And that's why we think this is so concerning for religious freedom. And, this is a bill if I may, that has been criticized by people of all faiths. It's been criticized by people on the political left and the political right. It's very divisive. And what we've been saying is that there are far bigger priorities that our communities need to deal with, like fixing the bail system, reversing what the Liberals have done to the justice system in the last 6-7 years. And we've been saying we need to set aside this really divisive and toxic Bill C-9 and focus on issues that there's a lot more consensus around, that communities like yours and like mine have been calling for, which is real justice reform. And we've been trying to do that on the Justice Committee, but the Liberals are still insisting that they believe Bill C-9 takes more priority than fixing the crime problem in this country.
So you mean our current laws are strong and clear enough to deal with hate crimes? We don't need any new law? That's what you're trying to say?
Absolutely. And there have been issues, I will say, where existing laws haven't been enforced. And that's a big problem we need to deal with. But the problem there is enforcement, not a need to change the law.
And there is another issue. You opposed removing the Attorney General's approval before hate speech charges are laid. Why is that safeguard important? What could go wrong if it's removed?
That's a really good question. So these things are very complicated, these decisions to decide whether someone has engaged in hate speech. And a lot of law enforcement officials do not have the experience or the expertise to deal with this. In large communities, a police department might have a dedicated hate crimes unit, but in others they don't. So if we're having someone a police officer investigate whether someone has broken the law, the Attorney General consent is important because it means that there's a safeguard there so that if a police officer lays a charge that they shouldn't, the Attorney General can say, well, hang on, that isn't actually what the law is supposed to govern. So what we don't want is a situation in which police do not have the tools they need, so they're just charging everyone they think might need to be charged in hopes that the courts will deal with it later. That's what we want to avoid. And so the Attorney General consent is a really important step to protect free speech and make sure that this section of the criminal code is not abused. And
Andrew, if Bill C-9 passes as it is, what do you think will actually change for ordinary Canadians, especially for activists, religious leaders, or people who protest publicly?
If Bill C-9 passes, people will have no idea whether what they are saying and doing is legal or illegal. The changes to the criminal laws on hate are so vague and undefined that if this bill passes, it will send a chill that will affect religious communities, minority communities, people who want to politically protest. It will hurt the very people the Liberal government claims it's trying to protect. So what I've been saying and my colleagues in the Conservative Party has been saying is that we need to set this aside, focus on bail. Let us fix the criminal justice system, which will actually save lives and make the country better in a very demonstrable way.
Thank you, Andrew, for your time today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. You have a great week.